Welcome to the second episode of our Deep Dive Nature Talk series, where we explore the profound connection between nature and mental health. Today, we're privileged to meet with two remarkable pioneers in nature-based mental health recovery in Wales, Shôn Devey and Andrew Dugmore.
Cynefin, welcome to my Cynefin, the place I dreamed of.
It's a special place, Shôn. I love coming here, and I'm being shown around the garden with you. It's, yeah.
It has a very special feel, this garden. Tell us something about your journeys and why are we here? I mean, I know it's very philosophical questions. What has brought us together is, from my point of view, it's my journey of being diagnosed with autism and adult ADHD and going on this exploration of how nature could be a part of making me manage my symptoms and be more functional in the world. And I've met both of you, Shôn and Andrew, on the journey, and you've become like reference points to me in this search for kind of sanity and and legacy. I'm here today, so tell us a little bit about your journey, Shôn, and what have brought you here and what resonates.
I grew up in quite a violent, angry household where there was lots of fear, lots of anger, lots of adrenaline and lots of danger. And I found in nature, I grew up in a beautiful part of Wales, North Wales, near Dolgellau, in the Mawddach Estuary. And as a child, nature made more sense to me than the human society that I lived in, although there were good people in my society. For me, nature wasn't a brutal, scary place, even when I saw snakes eating frogs and kestrels catching birds. For me, it felt quite natural and peaceful and connected, and that connection is what has kept me sane through my adult life, really, in a society that's pretty crazy.
Indeed, yeah. Andrew?
Yeah, I resonate. It's a similar story. I struggled as a young child. I was brought up in the valleys, and we had some beautiful landscapes, some hillsides, some mountain tops, even some hidden valleys where nobody lived except the woodcutter and the trees. And spent a lot of time, a lot of my adolescence just coming home from school and going out and wandering the woods and sitting in the woods and going for long walks. And I instinctively and naturally found great balm for my soul in those outward adventures. And very rarely I say very rarely because they're very special experiences. Sometimes while I was out there, the whole world opened up to me, and it's like if my deepest soul was pierced by nature. It's like if a huge sharp beam of sunlight just entered into me in a fleeting moment, and those moments I do the brook flowing behind me, and they were so instrumental, and that's something I thought, yeah, there was something very special there. And then as time progressed, I had even greater difficulty with the world, and I had a job to see any future, and I just saw the dark forces at work in the world, and they become too much for me, and everything fell in for me, and I become seriously mentally ill and admitted into hospital on numerous occasions and given a real serious diagnosis of serious mental health. And we really went into a dark place, and and wondered how I could come out of that dark place. And eventually the memory came back to me, the memory of my youth and my teenage years, or how I found great balm for my soul by being out in nature. And I thought, if only I could revisit those experiences, those places. And that was the beginning of my journey, perhaps, with nature, and part of my journey back to restored well-being, restored health.
That's right. Yeah. Let's speak a little bit about the significance of being in Wales and the connection we have between nature and the people here, and some phrases like Hiraeth and Cynefin. Could you expand a little bit on those?
I grew up in the Mawddach Valley in a forest called Coed y Brenin, the King's Forest. And for me, that was my original Cynefin, the place where I belong, the environment where I belong, the rivers, the lakes, the mountains surrounding it, became my Cynefin, and I could name. It was the place where I felt at home, but it wasn't just the house, it wasn't just the village, it wasn't just the valley, it was a whole extensive area that I related to as a child. As I said, I didn't want to be in the house, so I spent my time wandering the hills and swimming in the lakes and so on. And that Cynefin was very, very important to me, and it's a very deep word in Welsh. You know, the Welsh language is very connected to nature and the landscape. You know, the way places are named, the way the language is constructed, the proverbs within the language connect people to the natural environment. And it's only in fairly recent times that that disconnect has happened. You know, where Andrew speaks of the industrial valleys, you know, the Industrial Revolution changed Welsh society. Well, it changed all society, but changed Welsh society fundamentally, and our connection with nature. But in North Wales, where I grew up, it was less so. There was still that connection. And I can remember when they smashed a road through the village I grew up in, Llanelltid, and through Coed y Brenin, through the forest, and destroyed huge chunks of my sacred places, the places where I would hide, the trees I would climb to get away from people. To sit up in a tree, to me, was a place of safety. And from there, I became a guerrilla tree planter to try and restore the world. I realised that the forests of the world were being cut down everywhere. And that, so a big part of my life has been as a guerrilla tree planter, you know, restoring forests wherever I go, in Africa, in the Middle East, right, across Wales, everywhere. Tops of mountains, by streams. I can visit places in the South Wales valleys where I've planted trees along riverbanks to try and restore the forests. And Hiraeth, that deep longing we have in Welsh, and you could say that sometimes we're more interested in our past and a longing for a past than we are in shaping the future. But the Hiraeth for me comes from a longing for a world that we've almost destroyed, you know, that sense of a place of balance, a place of connection, a place of connection with nature, with wildlife, you know, not a predatory connection, but a loving connection with the wild world that I found as a child. You know, I had pet birds, pet crows that knew me, and I learned to speak crow, you know, to those crows. And it's only now that scientists are beginning to realise the sophistication of the language of crows. So yes, a deep Hiraeth, longing, deep soulful longing for another world, a different world, that I've then tried to connect people to and tried to create in my own life pockets of it, as in this garden, this little forest garden. And, you know, it's interesting in Welsh that recovery from difficult times, recovery from a mental health problem, you could say that someone has returned to their trees, dod yn ôl at fy nghoed. Dwi 'di dod yn ôl at fy nghoed. I'm back with my trees. I've returned here. I'm whole again. I'm recovered. I'm reconnected. Because for me, it's the separation from our natural selves, from our natural wild selves, that hurts us so much and that creates so many of our social health and mental health problems. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, the trees called out to me, that's for sure. The woods called out to me. You know, when I'm in the darkest place and ever so faint, and then the call grew louder, and I would make those walks, those journeys back into nature again, and particularly the woods, and I'm finding that connection within the woods. And then the Welsh thing, I am a Welshman, born and bred in Wales, and hardly left Wales, and I feel comfortable within Wales. I feel comfortable with most things about Wales. I love the heart of the Welsh people, and as I travel around Wales, I love to connect with different Welsh people from different parts of Wales and visit different parts of Wales. I love our history, love our mythology, I love our landscapes. So I feel very comfortable as a Welshman living within Wales, and when I meet up sometimes from friends from school or from my youth, and they ask me what have we done the last 40 years or so, what have we been up to, and sometimes I answer, well, I just dug a hole really and just stayed there. And that's what it feels like really. I haven't gone very far, and brought up a family and just dug a deep root really, and it's worked for me, just staying in this one place really and digging a deep root, and I'm happy with that really. I'm quite curious. I do like to go and see different countries, but always be able to come back to my home and to my hearth and to my roots.
I love that image of digging the deep root, you know, like the tree, the big root that goes down and grounds. You know, we talk some time about the elders and the wise ones, and we seem to have reached a time where there's little respect for age. You know, everybody wants the new, the quick and the new. And how we cast aside the older generation, and now that we're stumbling into our later years or our on this earth, it's interesting for me that, you know, I think I'm old at 72, but there's a tree just over there that's probably 350 years old, and you know, it's like respect for the elders has gone in so many ways. You know, the fact that tree has been here, standing there, goodness knows whether the farm was even there when that tree was growing. And we need to learn that respect for all the elders, you know, the elders of nature, the human elders. Yeah, don't know quite where I'm going with that, but
it's quite all right. And I think it is beautiful How did you come together? How did you meet each other? And how was it like for you when you kind of began the work of pioneering in the area of connection and nature? Andrew, maybe your work?
Because I discovered healing benefits for me within nature and helped me a lot. There were other things, and I can touch on some other things later also.
Yeah.
But because I discovered those things, I knew there was great worth in them. There was great value, and I wanted to share that value, that worth, with others. I felt a real urgency, a real need to be able to work with other people in nature so that together we could share the benefits of nature, the healing benefits of nature. And so that's what I started to do, and try to begin to formalize the work of how can we support each other in nature and nurture the benefits, so that we're open to those benefits of just being in nature. So I started to do the work and try to bring people along and go out on our adventures in nature, and that's when Shôn appeared, and that's when we started to meet up and talk and chat, usually over breakfast somewhere, and share our similar journeys of having difficult lives and both finding healing and help in nature, and beginning to how can we develop the work further, really, and thus when we got together, I think we had an initial meeting with you remember where we were at? But maybe you don't. But it was the foundations, the cradle for the West Wales Natural Health Network, and that's how it started, really. Yeah, and mushroom from those early days.
The mycelium is the earth.
Yeah. My journey to it was slightly different, well, completely different, but similar in many ways. As a young man, I grew up on, as a child, I grew up on adrenaline. Fight or flight was everyday life. And became addicted to adrenaline as a young adult, became a very wild, dangerous young adult who liked getting drunk, liked getting stoned, liked just being wild, didn't care whether I lived or died. Used to do existential motorbike riding where I would just ride a motorbike across a roundabout, full speed, just to see whether I deserved to even live. And found that what I was frightened of was when life was working well, and I've always been blessed, to be honest, one, not to have already killed myself, and secondly, not to have killed anybody else, and thirdly, have always been blessed with wonderful guides at the time when I needed them the most, people who got me, who saw me and were there to reach in. And learned in my 30s that the reason my life kept falling apart, the reason that relationships kept falling apart, the reason that jobs kept falling apart was because I was sabotaging them in the interest of getting an adrenaline rush. You know, I used to get very frightened when things were going well. So managed to find a way of packaging that adrenaline in riding waves, where, you know, it is quite hard to kill yourself surfing, however hard you try. you've got to surf some very dangerous waves in very dangerous places. And of course, I didn't want to kill myself. I just didn't know whether I should live or not. And I found that getting that adrenaline in the waves calmed me mentally, calmed me spiritually, as well as I adopted the practice of Tai Chi at a similar time, and found that I could live a harmonious, balanced, useful life, particularly helping others and creating projects that helped others. And when I moved to work for WAM 15 years ago, West Wales Action for Mental Health, one of the first jobs that Angie, the boss, gave me was an evaluation report which had come to the health board of a surf therapy program in Cornwall, and said, "Are you interested in this? I know you're a surfer, would you be interested in this?" And so proceeded as one of the first parts of my job to help develop a surf therapy program in West Wales. And from that thought, well, West Wales is blessed with a fantastic natural environment. Is there more out there? Heard about Andrew, went to one of his workshops and found the genuine stuff, really. A man who is rooted, deep-rooted. I was very touched by his practice and realised there was expertise out there, and wanted to continue meeting for breakfast, meeting at every opportunity, and find a way to move this work from the margins to the mainstream. And we decided to hold a conference and invite an academic from Essex University to address the conference. Weren't sure whether anybody would be interested, and suddenly found a room of 100 people, many of them practitioners, people who were working in nature to improve health, well-being and mental health, and suddenly realised that we tapped into what you talked about earlier, a mycelial network, an underground network that has spread across West Wales of people who were moved to this work. And at that point we decided that to create a network meeting, we didn't create the network, but a network meeting to begin to help that network to form and to share and to develop expertise and to develop access to resources, to develop the work and continue the work, and then to bridge that work to health systems and social care systems. Mm-hmm. And that's where we started plotting, really, wasn't it, Andrew? Yeah. Back in the days when we could plot.
Well, thank you both for the pioneering work you've done. Thank you for welcoming me to the garden here, myself and Andrew. It's so beautiful. Spring has come again. Yeah, let's go back up to the cottage and continue the themes. Any more themes coming?
Yeah, so coming back to now, the immediate reason why we are here doing this is because of you, Svend.
Right.
And you, Svend, who've connected with both of us, and I think it must be about 2 years ago you came on one of the workshops that we were delivering, and I made an instant, well, maybe not an instant connection, but made a connection with you, and we resonated with each other. There was something between us, and yeah, I suppose that there was that thing which we've remembered, and you've remembered that, and also you've made a connection with Shôn also, and three of us are here together for those reasons. You've connected with us.
Yeah, you both are reference points, I think, for people who are, struggling with this sort of reality and wondering if there is a deeper kind of sense of, yes, I would like to be part of using my own story to tell other people's stories. And both of you, we did have almost mystical experiences at that. So it was Maya Willow as well, and yourself at the race course, and we had some very, it was very transformational. And before that, many people had spoken about you actually, so I was quite excited to meet you. And you've spoken about Andrew as well, and yeah, so you've always been like reference points for me, and kind of.
I remember some uncontrolled laughter, like it doesn't often happen, but it's nice to be in that place where you've lost control through laughter.
We had it was a total breakthrough. It was a mystery tea, wasn't it? We didn't know what tea it was, and we just couldn't stop laughing. But yeah. Thank you for welcoming us to the garden. We got to get ourselves back to the garden, and while we're here, speaks of that theme of building bridges. Can we?
Yes, I've worked in different parts of the world developing projects throughout my life, really. And it comes from a saying that emanates from the Mabinogion, from the story of Bendigeidfran, and it so inspired me that I named my son Bran, Bendigeidfran. My eldest son is called Bran, and the saying in Welsh is "A fo ben byd bont." And it comes from the story of Bran, who used his body as a bridge to help his people cross a river in Ireland. As part of the story, I won't go into the details of the story, but "A fo ben byd bont," for the one who sees, be a bridge, or create the bridge. And that has inspired my work. When I first went to Africa, I was part of the old British colonial service where the white men did to the natives. And I was encouraged to go there and do what only a white man can do, which was teach the natives how to save themselves. And what I found was totally the opposite, that Africa and African people, Kenyan people, saved me, taught me about their place, taught me about their landscape. I didn't need that arrogance of "here have I come to tell you, you tell me," and realised very early on that what works, if you want change, is to connect people. So if you want to teach people farmers how to grow cabbages, find another farmer who's good at growing cabbages. Don't you try and teach them. Just get them together, and preferably with some food. And these things happen. So it's the way to build. It's very simple, but it's the way to make things happen. Get people together who share something, and if throw food or refreshments in there, and change will happen. And it was the principle that was behind the work with the nature-based network. I am not an authority on nature-based work. I know what I know and I do what I do. The authority on nature-based work is the collective. Yeah. So let's build the bridges so that collective can come into being. Let's build the mycelial network of people and projects so that it can reach its full potential. And that comes from, that story of Bendigeidfran. Of, we've slipped into an era of authoritarian leaders, and we need really leaders as healers, or selfless leaders, right, who let things happen, who don't grab the credit for it. And for me, that's that lovely old Welsh saying, "A fo ben byd bont," encapsulates it perfectly. leadership is selfless. Leadership is being the bridge or making the bridge. And once you make bridges, things can cross. Animals can cross from one side of the river to the other, even when it's in flood. Connect up. Just making connections, synapses.
A big part of your physical work today is actually building these physical bridges across this stream, isn't it?
Sounds easy.
A river, yeah.
But even that little bridge was a major feat of engineering.
I look forward to the completion of the bridge to the Council of All Beings over there.
You do.
Yes.
It's the next project.
Yeah.
I was hoping one of the trees would fall down and do it for me.
Well, maybe I'd like to help you with that one.
Not knock the trees down.
No.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Shall we go back up to the cottage?
That would be lovely.
Continue our conversation. Thank you so much.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
You coming in, guys?
Thank you.
Oh, warmed up now.
Bought this hat at the beginning of the winter. I don't normally wear hats, but I think I'll just give them a cold. It's a lovely wool hat for the winter.
Beautiful. You don't get my ears hit. I need something over my ears. I've got one with flaps down.
Nice.
So I've got bad surface here, so I've got
This is our deep dive nature talk, the second episode. We've had a walk around your wonderful garden, Shôn. Thank you so much. The healing garden. What is it? What's it called? This location again?
well, we're in Abedi. The garden itself is Coed of Elin. There used to be a mill down the road. Melin is a mill, so it's the mill wood.
Right.
Coed of Elin.
Right. Shôn, Devey, you've been a project worker with West Wales Action for Mental Health for 15 years, and you have you're a forest gardener, you're a development worker, a father, grandfather, and a wave rider, surfing the waves, wanderer seeker. You've worked in Africa and the Middle East and Europe, but mainly in Wales and mostly in community development. And then under Dugmore, you are a wellbeing and mental health educator and expert, lived experience, and you've worked in the field for 30 years. Being a licensed mental health first aid trainer and a mindfulness teacher, peer support worker, and also the first emotional CPR trainer in Wales. You are the founding director of Reconnect in Nature, and you have both pioneered in wellbeing in nature work, having co-developed the Level 3 National Qualification of Wellbeing in Nature. You're currently undertaking a doctoral in research in faith and spirituality and recovery in psychosis. You're also a father of 4 grown children and a grandfather too. I've been drawn to you both because in my own journey of kind of being diagnosed with autism and adult ADHD and kind of feeling very, very unwell, I was guided to go on this journey of seeking solace in nature, really, and then I was lucky enough to meet various people, and I've always found that you were like a reference point in my own journey. So I'd like to invite you to tell a little bit more about your stories, your beginnings, and what kind of led you on these paths that you've been led to go on, and then as you're in this kind of transition, both of you coming to, you're in this process of retiring, Shôn, you're in the process of maybe withdrawing from the work you've been doing, what's new on the horizons, etc., etc. So let's begin with the beginnings. If you can, Shôn, if you could tell me a little bit about your beginning and what led you on this path.
Yes, I mean, I was lucky enough. I remember at my father's funeral, my father was a brute of a man who made my life hell. But I remember at his funeral reading a poem which said, "You gave me nothing in life. You didn't give me any education. You didn't give me any love, any connection to you. But you raised me in this incredible environment, in this incredible nature, in the Mawddach Valley in North Wales. And my connection to nature saved me as a child, gave me a place where I could go that was safe, that made sense in a human world that made no sense at all to me as a sensitive child. And I've carried that connection with nature as a biologist, ecologist, forest gardener, whatever, my various incarnations through a long life. And to my work with West Wales Action for Mental Health as a development worker, wanting to share that connection for other people who are feeling dislocated, traumatized, unconnected to themselves, unconnected to the world, unconnected to others. And for me, it's been a blessing. That connection with nature has been a blessing that I've always wanted to share and will continue to try to share with people, even in my new transition into being a full-time state-sponsored forest gardener.
And Andrew, tell us some more about who you are. And
I suppose my biggest life-shaping experiences are of despair, hopelessness, no future, meaningless, serious mental illness, and the searching, the seeking for healing, I guess, but searching for meaning, searching for a reason to live. So that's been my driving force. So I eventually build up enough strength to go on a journey and to slowly move away from that place of darkness and hopelessness, and bit by bit, slowly but surely, that the darkness slowly becomes a little bit more lighter, and the light enters in, and then life becomes worth living again, and find fulfillment and meaning. And I'm happy to be here today and sharing these things with you. And yeah, so that lived experience is really shaped my life and made me who I am. And along that journey of, we can call it recovery, and it's not a recovery to something before the illness or the despair. I suppose it's a rediscovering of what was always there, and things opening up inside and becoming more of who I am, or who I always was, but it was just hidden or harmed or frightened. And my journey is just, those things have fallen away until now I'm comfortable with myself, I'm comfortable with the world, and I'm comfortable with others, and I'm in a much different place now, and that's my journey. And what's helped along the way. Certainly nature, I said earlier about that discovery and that ease which nature brings upon me, and that helped a lot. When things were difficult, I started journeying back to being in the woods again, and that helped a lot. But there are other things. There was this inner restlessness, this inner despair. So 30 years ago, I discovered a process of meditation, which I've followed ever since, which has helped settle things within. So that's been a significant process in my life, and that also feeds into being present in nature, because when we're present in nature, fully present, there is a nature awareness, there is a connection with everything around you, and that is a process of mindfulness. And having spent many years really in a metaphorical wilderness, and perhaps withdrawing from the world, the last decade or so there's been a turning back to the world, and really enjoying other people's company, and then being curious about other people and becoming connected with other people, and really valuing the human connection, the value of relationship. And so I guess in my work I've discovered this triangle really of connection. So I've come from a place of disconnection, and the triangle of connection would be to connect with that outside world, to be present in nature, that process of mindfulness, but also to connect within, to be present with myself and feel comfortable with myself, to have a relationship with myself. I'm okay. I can't be anybody else. I can't be you, Svend, or you, Shôn. I can only be me. So this is the closest thing I have. So I've got to get used to myself. I've still got another few years left on this earth, and I want to be comfortable with myself. So I think that's what we all venture towards. I think, to be at ease with oneself. And when we're at ease with oneself, we can be at ease with others, and we can enter into that relationship with each other in an easier way. And for me, it comes down to attention and care, and it's being mindful of oneself, being present with oneself, being present with each other, and being present with our surroundings. So those are the things which on my journey I've discovered, and those are the things in my work of reconnecting nature I really try to share with others, because you came on one of my sessions, Svend, and we really didn't do much, did we? We just sat with each other a lot and shared. We didn't do a lot of activity, but we were definitely present with each other and present with our surroundings, and hopefully a little bit more present with ourselves. And for some people, that really helps them. And my foundation then all along that journey, and a growing foundation, a growing rock in my life has been my family. I've been married a long time now. They say for better or for worse. It's a long time, and I'm not going anywhere. We together now for the rest of our days. So, you know, well, let's get the maths right on this. I'm 37 years married, so that's a long time now, and I enjoy my family. I enjoy my 4 children. I enjoy my grandchildren, and that's the foundation, which is the backrock to my life as well. So that's about it, really. We could begin to shape these things I just described to you in perhaps spiritual terms or even religious terms. All I would say, I have a belief that there's something else at work rather than just me. And it's not something distant away up in the clouds from us with a long straggly beard and some fine divine cloaks. I think it's here and now and amongst us.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to, I mean, for me, one of the greatest discoveries on my journey was Taoism and Tai Chi that helped me, a sort of moving meditation. I was a very agitated young man, so couldn't do quiet meditation, found it almost impossible to sit still. But I found in Tai Chi a moving meditation in nature, and had a teacher who taught us to mimic nature, because Tai Chi comes from monks observing nature and observing animal movements. And most of the movements in a Tai Chi form are related to animal movements. Snake creeps down, and found an ability to connect that to nature, connect it to the trees, connect it to the animals in the woods. And in Taoism, an escape from the Christian religion that I grew up with, which was a punishing religion. You know, we're all sinners and need to be punished. And I don't know why we're all sinners. I don't feel like I do things, I make mistakes occasionally in life, but I don't intentionally go out to hurt or to damage or to... So in Taoism, I found a tolerance, a kind of acceptance of self as a flawed human being. You know, we're perfect, but we're also flawed in a true sense. So for me, finding a belief system that didn't rely on a hierarchy gave me instant access to the spirit that I could feel in nature, and an explanation, you know, a shape of that, which is about the way, the path, the journey, finding your path. Is the essence of the sort of spiritual aim. Find your path, find your truth. Try to be the wise one, the sometimes called, in a poor translation from the Chinese, the perfect man, which is too gendered for me, but this kind of human being who is good, you know, is fundamentally a good person, who serves the world in a good way. And that's together with my sort of scientific and nature connection, that belief system, and a practical physical manifestation of the sort of meditative process in nature. And that sense of movement, because to me nature is never static, you know. I sit in these woods sometimes and you think, wow, these old trees, they just sit there, you know, they just sit there on the rock. And the woods are just this static thing. And the more I'm in the woods, the more I reason that it's never, ever static. Never, ever. Constantly moving, constantly changing. Trees falling, mycelial networks working their way through the soil, water flowing through the soil. You know, it's just constant. Nothing is ever static. The world is never static. And sometimes I struggled mentally in life, wanting things to be fixed and permanent and safe. I don't want my dear friends to die. I don't want things to not move. I want to be in this moment of happiness. And actually, nothing ever stays the same. The truth of it is, it's all in motion, constant motion and movement. And the Tao, the Taoist belief understands that, this constant change and movement, and it is about you flowing with that movement, about the flow of water and the flow of your energy and your understanding and your life, to find that flow, to find and not get worried by those changes and those dramas and those traumas that will inevitably get thrown at you. So it's been a useful mental health tool for me.
Yeah, definitely. The only constant is change, and I'm wondering now, because I have this whole list of questions, and I just feel like having a conversation now, which is what comes in the moment, and I'm wondering, when you kind of look back and you're in the moment and you look forward, like when you look back at, one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you both is because you're both pioneers in this area of nature-based, like as a way of recovering from mental health and being stable, etc., etc. And I've met you on my journey, and I've appreciated the presence of both. And I think there is something about you both being still, and you both, like, there's a reference point for me. And when you look back at the service you've done in this area, how is it, like, how is this work transforming it as you have witnessed it, and how was it for you to go into the work when you began?
What was the last bit? Sorry.
How was it when you first began this work and you entered?
I can honestly say people didn't get us. People wonder, what on earth are those people up to? So we did stick out like a sore thumb, really, when we first started. But the work is really mushroomed, and we've engaged with a lot of people. We've even trained a lot of leaders, and there are a lot of good practitioners out there now, and the work has moved on. And I'm happy just to step back, because there's a lot of skilled practitioners out there now, and a lot of them doing a far better job than I can do, and skilled, and yeah, it's good work. But I would just be mindful, if you're working in nature-based practice and you're trying to work with people's mental health and well-being, really do consider what are the best conditions for somebody to move on with their well-being and their mental health, and never forget the power of good, open, supportive, equal relationships. And that's probably the most important lesson, the most important gift which I received and shared in my training, is that to respect everyone as equals, and to really listen to them, really to value everybody you work with, and try to enable the best conditions for themselves to come forward and to come out of the difficulty that they're experiencing. And by properly listening and valuing and encouraging and perhaps empowering them, and helping them on their own journey of self-discovery, finding their strengths, their abilities, trying new things out, and those people then feeling supported by people around them, I think that's when we are nurturing the most favourable conditions. So for me, when we set up the work of reconnecting nature, it wasn't reconnect with nature, it was reconnect in nature. So it's a purposeful word, because just by doing that, we honoured the power of the human connection. And I always say to people also that we are nature ourselves as humans. We are biological species, and even if we find ourselves in a sterile concrete jungle with no wildlife or no greenery around us, we still have each other. We still have each other's nature to connect with.
I remember two particular incidents. One, back in the 1990s, I was working in public health, and I was disciplined by my managers for having a meeting outside, a walk and talk meeting, because it was seen as skiving or not doing the job properly. Because at the time I always felt constrained in offices and inside buildings, but it was seen as a disciplinary offence to go outside and walk with someone and talk with them. And 15 years ago, when we were starting the surf therapy program, I did a presentation to the health board, because the health board had requested whether we could look at surf therapy, and they came back to me with, what, you're going to take suicidal people into the ocean? Are you mad? You know? And now we've got a health board that's desperate for social prescription. You know, that the suits, the grown-ups at the top of the system now suddenly get the idea. And how that has sort of transitioned in my lifetime, you know, is phenomenal. They still can't find the money to fund it, but that's a whole problem for health as it is. They can't fund what they do already. So it's really interesting how, and particularly in the last 15 years, and COVID played a huge part in that, accelerated the understanding of how important nature connection is to people. You know, I did presentations to psychiatrists 10 years ago about nature-based work, and saying to them, well, if your psychotherapy or your psychology work in a darkened or a horrible health board room, the kind of awful corporate rooms that they use for therapeutic processes, I said, well, if your therapy doesn't work, if you did that outside, at least one, you'd have a walk, and two, nature would touch people. And again, they thought I was bonkers. And then after COVID, we had one of the psychiatrists who had relied on a very small garden, which had saved her mental health during it, suddenly coming on board. And I think it switched so many people, decision makers, all kinds of people suddenly realized during COVID how important nature was for them. And it's created a huge social transformation, really, that magazines are full of it, newspapers are full of it, nurses get it, doctors get it, everybody gets it. And we have, as Andrew said, a very talented generation coming through now who are committed to nature-based work, who are committed to this work, and are very skilled, very thoughtful, very connected people. Who are there to the next generation to carry this work forward in whatever form it takes. So it's very exciting to see, and lovely to feel that what you've done has a legacy. You know, that I move on to whatever else I do, but you leave a legacy that's thriving. It really is a thriving sector. And I think that again, going back to the human energy and the willingness to do it, and the connection to nature, and the need of nature for humans to connect back with nature, not just for their own needs, but for the sake of healing nature as well. Mm-hmm. That beautiful cycle, you know, I heal nature, and in that process I am healed myself. Nature is depleted and needs us. We need to restore nature. And in that process, we will restore ourselves. it's what's needed in this time. Joanna Macy talks about the great turning, the great social turning, when we suddenly change our relationship as a society, we change our relationship, we ditch consumerism and this idea that there's endless economic growth based on the destruction of the planet. We are in the great turning. We can see it, we can feel it around us. Human society is changing. And you can see the opposite polarizing, the Trumps of this world who are trying, let's dig more oil, drill, baby, drill, was his mantra. You can see that resistance. But the inevitable is happening. It is happening spontaneously through some sort of amazing mycelial network that is just connecting the human spirit up for this change. And it's much greater than the nature-based healing. It's a reconnection with nature and a restoration of nature for the sake of the future of the planet and the future of ourselves as societies, really.
Yeah, it does feel like there's a paradigm shift in many fields. And would you like to talk a little bit more about the human connection, Andrew? That's the work you're doing now, and what are you?
Yeah, it's you catch both Shôn and I in a place of transition, and letting go of some things to create more space for other things to emerge. So I'm just pulling back from reconnecting nature now, and we were going to close it down, but I think it will survive. That there are a couple of people who are interested in coming on board, and hopefully we can hand it over to them, so there will be a lasting legacy of reconnecting nature. But what am I doing now, and what I'm looking forward to, I guess, is it? And you ask about the human connection, and I think I have over the last few years a real calling. After having spent so many years in the wilderness, perhaps, and I'm withdrawn a little bit from society, that over the last decade or so, that there has been this more calling to be with people more, and to be alongside people more, and I really feel that now, and I really feel that is going to happen more in the future, because I do have a desire for the last few years of my life to want to help people more. I feel it's my fulfillment now. It's my fulfillment of my life to want to help people more. Where it's a good match, where the needs, where my gifts or my sharing matches the needs of an individual, and that won't be everybody, but where there is a good match. I feel I want to help people, and I have something which I can share with people, and I think particularly people who are struggling with psychosis, with schizophrenia. I'm not convinced, not at all convinced, on the biomedical model and the way society treats or is in fear of, misunderstands people with psychosis and schizophrenia. So I'm at ease with that, really. I think there are other ways of understanding and approaching psychosis and schizophrenia, and I would really like to be able to help people in their recovery and their healing. And I want to enter into that more and more. That's why I did go back. A big reason why I went back to university 8 years ago. I couldn't finish my first degree because of my illness. I had to leave university. I wasn't well enough to go back to university. It's only 8 years ago that I can go back to university, and I go straight back and do my master's degree. I have no time really to start with a degree, so I go straight back in and do my master's in mental health recovery, and really trying to understand the recovery process of psychosis and schizophrenia. And then 3 months later, I'm doing my PhD. So my PhD is really trying to understand the nature of as best I can of what's happening in psychosis and schizophrenia, and I take great encouragement from what I discover in the indigenous world, because whether it be Maoris, Aboriginals, North American Indians, there are people from the opposite sides of the globe who have a different understanding of psychosis to what we have in our westernized biomedical approach, where it's completely seen as a biochemical imbalance within the brain, and the individual is at fault. Within indigenous culture, there is a completely different understanding. It's considered another worldly experience which may have value, and that person may be able to bring a great gift back to the community, and the healing process of the person who's entered into that otherworldly experience. It's a community healing process. So anybody with psychosis or schizophrenia in a Western world will face usually a very hostile external environment of unease, of misunderstanding, of enforced admission, enforced medication. But within an indigenous community, there's an understanding that the community have a shared responsibility here to help this individual back to everyday functioning. And with an understanding that that individual from that other place, that otherworldly place, will have had insights of value which can be shared with the community. So that's what I'd like to do more and more of, is to work with people with psychosis and schizophrenia and offer hope, and maybe offer a different approach, a different understanding to how we may be able to work with people in psychosis and recovery, which is all about, I believe, nurturing the most favourable conditions around the individual, wrap around care. And if we nurture in that most favourable condition, we have a good chance that that person can move forward in their recovery journey. So I'm doing a lot more with the human connection and training, and very much about listening. Big thing about listening. So I've been apprenticing for the last 4 years, with also alongside my PhD apprenticing with a retired American psychiatrist called Dr. Dan Fisher. He's 82 years of age now, and he's led an incredible career. He's been a great mentor to me. He's taught me many things. But I'm sure Dan won't mind me saying a little bit about his history, in that in his early 20s he was forcibly admitted to hospital on a number of occasions and given a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And on his last exit from his last admission, he more or less said, that's no way to treat somebody. I'm going to train to be a psychiatrist and show the world there's a better way of doing this. And he did. He went on to train to become a psychiatrist and led an incredible career. But what amazes me, he distills his work simply down to the power of good, authentic, lay human listening. And that's where he received the most benefit himself. Not from a qualified psychiatrist or psychologist, but from an ordinary lay person who took time to sit down with him and to listen to him. And that was a starting point. And that's what he's always held on to all his life in his work. So his training now, he's co-developed a training in America called emotional CPR. So that's what I've been doing with him for the last 4 years. So that's been a big thing for me. And I also truly believe in the power, going on from that, the power of peer support, that just ordinary people being alongside each other as peers can be a powerful healer. So that's what I'd like to do more of, but I could talk about other things as well, non-work things, which I want to do more of as well, like painting, rediscover, and also going back to the woods again myself, because I don't think I've gone back to the woods again enough recently. So I got my backpack sitting there and my walking boots and my tent, and I've got to get out there and go on solo return to the woods again.
I'd love to invite you to speak about the significance of being in Wales and the Welsh language, and then also invite you to share some poetry. That's Shôn.
Okay, you remember we talked in the woods about the sort of link to Welshness and the language, and how the language is full of sort of rich nature connections, and there's a lovely saying in Welsh which you would normally say to someone who is really struggling, really struggling with life, with their mental health, with a general sense of purpose. And it's a beautiful saying, Fe ddaw eto hael ar fryn. Really short, really simple. But Fe ddaw eto hael ar fryn, the sun will return to the hill. And, it's just a very, very simple saying, but about that beautiful moment when you see, after a dark period, a storm, or even during a storm sometimes, this shaft of light that comes down and just shines on a piece of ground. A beautiful nature metaphor, and a beautiful metaphor of hope in really dark times, really difficult times. And it links beautifully to me to one of my favourite Welsh poets, the great R.S. Thomas, one of the most amazing Welsh poets, and very, a rural vicar in North Wales, right in the Llŷn Peninsula, one of the wildest parts of West Wales. His poetry really echoes that sort of nature connection, that Welshness linked to the land, embedded in the land of Wales. And it's called The Bright Field, so links beautifully to that saying. And I've not read any commentary on the poem, but he may have actually linked it, come from that saying itself, Fe ddaw eto hael ar fryn, the sun will return to the hill. It's called The Bright Field. I have seen the sun break through to illuminate a small field for a while, and gone my way and forgotten it. But that was the pearl of great price, the one field that had treasure in it. I realise now that I must give all that I have to possess it. Life is not hurrying on to a receding future, nor hankering after an imagined past. It is the turning aside, like Moses, to the miracle of the lit bush, to a brightness that seems as transitory as our youth once, but is the eternity that awaits you. It's a kind of apt from as transitory of our youth, Andrew.
Yeah, eternity awaits us.
Eternity awaits. But what a beautiful poem about living now, that the beauty is here now. Don't miss it, don't rush on, Take the time, listen, observe. Listening that Andrew talked about, the power of listening to nature, listening to each other. The greatest healing, give somebody a good listening to.
Indeed, yeah, I'm enjoying listening. And what are you looking forward to, Shôn, now? What do you want to get involved with?
Well, it's really interesting that Andrew is focusing more on engaging with people, whereas I feel I've spent a career in the midst of people and in the midst of really difficult systems, the health system, the social care system, the education system. There's all the places where I've tried to make changes against systems that kind of shut you out or try to shut you out and try and avoid change. So I'm looking forward to getting back to nature, for leaving those human constructs behind and getting back into the woods, returning to my trees. And I just feel that nature now is in such a state that it needs that human energy to be focused on the healing of nature, on looking after nature, and creating new models of how we make that happen, how we look after our rivers, how we look after our woods, how we increase the wildness, the wild nature, because there's huge, we know it needs to happen. We know the greatest carbon capture we could do is restore our forests. And yet we're so, there's so much hoo-ha about planting trees, and more than planting trees, a forest is not a collection of 50 trees. A forest is a complex ecosystem. It's much more than planting trees. Trees are the beginning, but to recreate those ecosystems, to restore the biodiversity in nature, takes a lot more understanding and a lot more complex work. And to me, that's what I want to engage with and study and learn and share with people. And to save this river, the Devey, from the awful chemicals and slurry and sewerage that gets thrown into it, it's a beautiful river. So that's where I'm hoping to go. And I feel certain that, the nature-based health work and mental health work will carry on, will grow. It's got a life of its own now. What I would say, and I'd echo what Andrew said about, there are an awful lot of projects that think that well-being in nature is mental health work. And I would say, no, well-being in nature is a kind of population, is interesting for the whole population, getting back to nature, connecting to nature. There's a danger in that if we have more and more people trampling through vulnerable nature, that we can destroy the wildness that's left. So one, I think it's about people going back to nature, but understanding the nature they go back into and having a responsibility, a partnership towards it. But if in doing serious mental health work in nature, there needs to be an understanding of how difficult that work is. It's quite complex work. And there's a danger that we think it's simple because we do well-being in nature, and there are a lot of projects doing well-being in nature, that they can slip very easily into doing mental health work in nature. And in my experience, limited experience of working with our surf therapy program, is that when people have serious and enduring mental illness, the work is different. It's not like taking a group of happy people into nature. This is serious work and skilled work. And what do you do when someone's having a breakdown in one of your sessions, or has come to the session, has managed to make it there, which in itself on that day is a huge achievement, but is not sharing the goals of that session? What do you do? How do you adjust that session? And how do you adjust that session to the individual needs of 8 people with very different fluctuating needs that change week on week? It's incredibly skilled and difficult work. So I would urge that sector to take that work seriously and begin to understand mental health. That's a training issue, that's an understanding issue. And get away, and particularly the adventure sector that's now moving into this work, the adventure sector, which is the kind of coast steering, kayaking, those kind of brigade who feel that they can do this work but are used to having paid groups who go along for an experience. When you're working with vulnerable people, with neurodiversity, with mental health issues, your goals need to be adaptable. It's not about, we canoed 2 miles and we got to this rock and we came back as the achievement. For some people, even getting to the water's edge on that day is a major achievement, and sometimes getting in a kayak and going out to sea is not an appropriate response for their needs on that day. So it's about learning to be a bit more subtle about how we work with people and less agenda focused.
Thank you, Shôn. Thank you, Andrew. How would you like to finish this conversation? Any last words coming?
I'd just like to thank you, Svend, for bringing us together. It's been an enjoyable experience and lovely to have this particular conversation, which we wouldn't have had otherwise. And I've learned so much from it.
Yeah, and this is a wonderful cottage and garden, healing garden. What is it called again, your cottage? What is it?
The cottage is a Beatty at Coed Melin.
Right. And it's available for rent. Right, this has been a wonderful conversation. Andrew, anything last words?
Similar to Shôn, thank you both. This has been a great connection, a deepening connection with each other, and it's been really soulful.
Yeah, very beautiful. Thank you very much to you both, and thank you to my co-producer and co-director Caitlin Longden, who's here, along with Gus Hewlett. They're both adventure filmmaking students in their 3rd year. And I'm looking forward to my next podcast will be with Elijah Parker from the Gene Keys, and then we may see how we get along with our funding, but you have been very instrumental helping Caitlin and I to work with Coed Clare, and we have hopes, and we trust the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Svend.
Thank you, Sven.